Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hormonally Speaking. I'm so pumped and excited to have my good friend Vashti Kanahele on this week, and we are talking about her brand new book. And I just have to say, before we get into actually talking about her process and experience and everything that she's been through, that I've watched her write this book and she's really put her heart and her soul into it. And she's done such an incredible job. We were just talking right beforehand. I can't believe that she did this in 10 months. It's just insane to me because it's not just about health and her health experience and how she got into doing the work that she's doing now, but also, this really impactful reality of her life of living all these different places in the world and the experience that have really made her and made her family too. And so it's deep and powerful, and I think is better than maybe just the average biography, right? But also the average, oh, this is a health book to get you through chronic illness kind of a thing. And we've got some stories in there. She really weaves her life together in a way that is inspirational and is going to help any of you that are experiencing chronic illness issues, or just any, you've been dealing with your hormones for a long time and it's been really tough. So again, today's guest is Vashti Kanahele, and she's an author and functional medicine practitioner. She exudes a profound passion for exploring diverse cultures and embracing immersive experiences. Her personal triumph over Lyme disease and complex chronic illness fuels her determination to empower others on their healing journeys. Having lived in Baghdad, Beirut, Phnom Penh, Lagos, and Curacao, Vashti's experiences have shaped her holistic approach to health and wellness. Now residing in Virginia with her family and African village dog Owen, Vashti's practice is dedicated to seeking the root causes of disease. With a keen eye for detail and a compassionate heart, she delves deep into patients' health histories, lifestyles, and environmental factors to uncover the underlying triggers of their ailments. Through her writings and clinical expertise, Vashti inspires others to embrace the world's beauty, travel freely, and embark on a transformational path to vibrant health. Welcome.
Thank you, Christine. It's always so good to be on here with you.
Oh,
I'm
I
so
love it.
excited to be talking about the book with you today.
Oh my God. It's so amazing just to have all these stories on paper now, right?
Yeah,
And for everybody who's reading it to go through these experiences with you, right? So I
right.
kind of want to start from the beginning and, maybe have you sort of delve into how you even got into traveling and living all these different places in the world.
Sure, absolutely. In 2008, I married my husband Craig, and he is in the Foreign Service, is our diplomatic corps in the United States. And when we got married, it was like, where are we going to go next? We didn't know, but I knew it was going to change my life. I just couldn't see then just how much it would change my life.
Hmm.
And really, I found myself on this journey that I never ever foresaw myself living, growing up. And so in 2009, we went to my first post. He'd been multiple posts before that, and we went to Baghdad, Iraq during the war. And I was able to
Crazy.
accompany him there because we didn't have children at that time,
Hmm.
and they needed more people to do, a variety of jobs there. And so I applied for and got a job at the U.S. Embassy there with him, and off we went.
Well, I remember reading, the Baghdad portion of the book and
Mhm.
just being flabbergasted by that life experience,
Yeah.
right? And just like how you had to live very contained
Yes,
because
absolutely.
obviously it was such a threat, as an American to be there. I mean, as
Hmm.
anybody to be there, but as an American to be there.
Hmm.
So, what was that like going into living sort of in this small little radius, essentially?
It was like nothing I had ever experienced before. I mean, college, you kind of like live in a small radius too,
Mhm.
but then so kind of take that and put a bunch of adults living,
Mhm.
in a 11-acre compound, I
Mhm.
think it is. And there we are living and working every day. And it has all of the human aspects that you would find when any group of people are
Mm,
that close together all the time.
mhm,
But then you add in that sort of danger element to it, and
mhm.
it heightens all of that, you
Yeah.
know? So it was just like jumping into an experience. I had no idea what I was doing.
Mhm.
I remember I was on this Black Hawk helicopter and I'm like, what did I sign up for? You know, there's like a
Yeah,
gunner at the door.
yeah,
You know, we're flying over Iraq doing these evasive maneuvers, and it was just like this, not what I thought small town girl, you know, was going to end up doing
yeah,
this. And so there we were. And, you know, it was also the beginning of, probably I was already set up for chronic illness, but you
yeah.
know, it was a very stressful environment
That's what I was gonna ask, yeah. Yeah.
and not great food options. I mean, obviously we're in a war zone and I'm not complaining about that at all. You
Mhm,
get what you get.
mhm, mhm.
And just there's just that heightened stress and always living in a fight or flight, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's a theme in the book, that a lot of my life has been lived in fight or flight mode. And I
Mhm.
just didn't realize it at the time.
Mhm.
But it was great because all of those aspects aside, I made great friends.
Mm.
Some that I still, you know, I just saw last week, you know,
Mhm.
it's just, it's so that part was really fabulous. Like that beginning of creating a community that's global.
Mm. Mhm, absolutely. Did you notice any shifts in your health when you were there, or is it something that just kind of you notice more over time?
Absolutely. I mean, I knew
Mhm.
I wasn't sleeping well.
Mhm.
Readers will see that where I'm talking about like, oh my goodness, I'm sleeping. I didn't realize I wasn't sleeping.
Mm.
And then I got quite ill there over our July 4th weekend with food poisoning, and definitely saw a shift in my gut health after that.
Mm. Mhm.
You know, and so I didn't, but I wasn't really paying attention.
Right, right. How old were you? Were you in your 20s at that point or
I was
30s?
in my early 30s, so I think
Mhm.
I must have been about 33 at that point, 32,
Mhm.
33, and I was just, you know,
Just
living
push
this
through. Yeah,
very exciting life.
yeah.
And yeah, absolutely push through. I mean, you're working 7 days a week, 365, you know, it's all the time.
Yeah.
And we got some great vacations out of there, but still it was it was a real ding to my health without even realizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then where did you go after Baghdad?
So after Baghdad, we got posted to Beirut, Lebanon,
Mhm.
and we moved there in 2010.
Mhm.
So Baghdad had been 1 year tour because it was a war zone, and then we moved to Beirut, and that was a totally different thing. Still very small, and security risks were high there. So we had to live in a certain way.
Mhm.
But again, lots of people on a compound, with all those human elements that go with that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then really lifelong friends there as well. But that's where I was really living the sort of rock star lifestyle. It was insane. Again, mid 30s, just living it up. You know, it was amazing. A beautiful country, lovely people. I loved the food there. You know, it was just all that fresh Mediterranean diet. So that was
Mm.
that was
So you
amazing.
got, like, more options when you lived there than
So many more
Baghdad. Yeah.
options. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, in Baghdad, we couldn't shop
Right.
outside.
Right.
You know, there were not any grocery stores that we could go to. So everything came through convoys there
Mhm.
and through the military convoys. And it just
Mhm.
depended on what they could get through, what we were getting
Right.
past the insurgents. So
Right.
that was different. Beirut had all of the delicious food, all the fresh
Mhm.
food. You know, I could eat Lebanese food every day for the rest of my
Nice.
life and be totally happy. Um, but that's where we decided to start trying to have a
A baby.
family,
Yeah.
and that's when we realized that there were some issues with my health, and that's like that first indication that, you know, everything wasn't going to be as easy as we had thought it would be.
Right. And was there good medical support there, or were you kind of
Absolutely.
okay. Yeah.
Yes, it was great medical support. And I was so thrilled that with my reproductive endocrinologist that I ended up seeing there, and I credit him with really helping me be able to have babies. I don't want to give too many much of the story away,
Right.
but you know, that was really and very impressive medical.
And was that an American endocrinologist or was it a Lebanese
He was a
endocrinologist?
Lebanese endocrinologist,
Mhm.
but he was as many Lebanese have studied in the United States. I believe he had gone to Harvard or MIT, and then,
Mm,
the University of, it was the American University of Beirut Medical Center. So
gotcha. Okay.
ties to the US anyway. And it was, I ended up having some serious health complications there. And both he and my neurologist were amazing. And
Do
she
you
had
feel like you
also gone to Columbia or something. Yeah, I can't
gotcha.
remember, but both of them were American trained docs.
Do you feel like you almost got better support there than you would have in the US?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm,
I had had a previous miscarriage, and it was, having friends and other people that in my life who've had like multiple miscarriages in the US, they don't really do testing on you. Those like kind of sorry until you get to X point of like,
right.
miscarriages.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, we're going to do these tests now. And
Mm.
so we were able to really dial in on some of those health issues and create a plan that ultimately helped us be able to have kids.
I feel like I've heard that, at different points from different people that you can almost get better medical coverage, even if it's American connected medical coverage when
Yeah,
you're abroad than you can
right.
here, you know? And so it is interesting to think about, obviously, your body had to go through a lot being in these, kind of, intense situations, but at the
Mhm.
same time, you also had maybe some better access to healthcare than you would
Yes,
have here.
so true.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have my baby there. Like I would have felt
Mm,
completely at ease
mhm,
giving birth in Lebanon. It
mhm,
just wasn't uh, what I could do at the time.
mhm,
So, but I do think that because I've had one child overseas and one in the US, and they were vastly different
mm, mhm,
experiences.
mhm, absolutely. So
Yeah.
when did you start to learn that there was some chronic illness issues at play?
That was a ways down. So
Mhm,
like after Beirut, we moved to Cambodia, which is where I got bit by an unknown insect that really changed the
mm,
trajectory of my
mm,
life. And it was after that and having given birth in Bangkok, and I just wasn't getting better. I was feeling terrible. And I was like, this isn't normal, even new mom stuff. Like
yeah,
there's something wrong. And we went back. Our next assignment was in the United States after Cambodia. And I'm a voracious researcher of things. And so I was like, what is happening to me? And nobody
yeah,
could really figure it out. Like even, at my doctors in Bangkok and in Cambodia, it was just nobody was like really able to put their finger on what was going on with me. So
mhm,
I started thinking like, this really sounds like Lyme disease.
mm,
And I need to find somebody
yeah,
that can help me
yeah,
here. And so I ended up locating a doctor in the Seattle area, which is where my family is from, and she really helped me. She tested for Lyme, reactivated EBV, my adrenal health, my thyroid health, the whole thing. We were like
mhm,
going down that road, and it came back that yeah, I had Lyme disease and I had reactivated mono. Or EBV,
mhm,
and my thyroid was a mess. My adrenals were shot. That no real surprise given my stressful lifestyle to
right,
that point.
right,
And so that's when that really occurred. And it was several years later when we were in Nigeria, which was our post following that, that I got the diagnosis of Hashimoto's,
mm,
which that often happens where you'll get something like Lyme disease, and then you end up having an autoimmune
immune
disease of some
disease,
sort,
right, that makes sense.
after that.
So
So
around what year was your Lyme disease diagnosis?
2017.
2017. Okay. So, I mean, it was, I guess Lyme was maybe talked about somewhat then, but not in the way that it's talked about now, right? People didn't
No,
necessarily know as much to look for Lyme disease.
absolutely. I think now, I mean, it's become such an epidemic in the United
Mhm.
States, and really, we're seeing it even more globally now. That there's this deeper understanding that you don't have to be in the Midwest or the Northeast to get
Right.
Lyme disease.
Right.
Like you
You can
can
get it
get it
anywhere.
anywhere, and it's not necessarily just, ticks that are carrying it, and then all
Yeah.
of um the co-infections that come with that.
Mhm. Mhm.
They don't travel alone. So there's just so much more literature and education and understanding about the really the breadth and depth of Lyme disease now. But back
Hmm.
then, it was like kind of the Wild West,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't even a decade ago.
Right. Right.
But just with medical advances, so I was able to see her, but we were moving to Texas, so I only had like
Hmm.
this very small window of time with her, and then I was going to Texas, and my medical care there wasn't nearly as robust.
Hmm.
Um, and so it was a real struggle.
Yeah.
And with my readers will see in that Texas chapter, it is a huge struggle for me in
Mm,
those
mhm,
years.
mhm,
And
I can imagine.
um, so then, we were going back overseas um, well, I kind of got ahead of myself, but with the Lyme diagnosis, then I went to Texas and then Nigeria, and I struggled because I was so far away from my healthcare team.
Yeah.
It was, how do I get better? Um, Lagos is known for its, very bad air quality, and
Yeah.
that wasn't helping me at all.
Yep,
You
yep.
know, there were just so many environmental factors there. While I really liked living there, actually, it was not helpful to my health in that
Mhm,
that moment.
mhm.
And so then I had come home for a Christmas break during when we lived in Nigeria, and that's when I got that Hashimoto's diagnosis.
Mhm.
And went back to Lagos, and I thought, I'm going to starve to death. I
Mm.
don't know what I'm
Because
going to
because
do.
they said you can only eat, like, certain
Gluten
things?
free,
Yeah,
right? Like you need to
mhm,
be gluten free, and you need
mm,
to do a diet where you're eliminating things for X amount of time and then bringing them back in. And so you can find your triggers, which is so true. That's
right,
absolutely like
yeah,
what you need to do. But I was like, I don't know
not an
how I'm
option
going to
there.
do this.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so thankfully, because we're diplomats overseas, we have access to mail. So that did make things much easier. And
Mm,
that, some expats don't have that access to
mhm,
US mail. So
right,
I wanted to be clear that like I actually did have access to
yeah,
things. It just took like 5 to 6 weeks sometimes
to
to get
get
it
there.
stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But we had an amazing helper, Gladys, and she would help me with cooking foods and really trying to figure out like local things
Mm,
that maybe we could use in
mhm,
place of to make flour and stuff like that. So she, tiger nut, things that are
yeah,
really grown on the African continent. And
right.
so that was so helpful. And she was also like, so while there were like so many environmental things that weren't good for me in Nigeria, that's where I was able to really start resting. I had
Mm,
someone who helped me all the time, like
mhm,
Gladys. And so
mhm.
like she would help me with the kids, and she would say, go take a nap. She was there to cook food for me, to make bone broth, she was really involved in helping me get better. And
Mhm.
I don't know that I would have without her,
Not her.
honestly, you
Can I
know?
ask what, how she reacted to, because I can imagine, Americans, especially now that we're so kind of knowledgeable, but also tied into food sensitivities and things like that, like going over there and talking about this with her initially, was she like, are you crazy? Or was she just,
It's such an American thing,
yeah,
right?
totally.
Really.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, so we're not going to have any dairy for now. We're not going to
Yeah.
have any soy. We're not going to have any wheat for sure. No
Yeah.
gluten, And she's just like, what? But then she was like, okay, I don't understand. But she really wanted to know. So
Right.
like
Right.
together we learned,
Mhm.
you
That's what,
know.
yeah.
And I was giving classes on women's health and stuff like that there too. So I was, kind of already in this. That's where I was kind of changing my whole actually
Mm.
career during
Mhm.
this time. So it was funny. We really learned a lot together.
Together. Well, and, you and I talk about this a lot, and I know this is an underlying part of your book too, the power of community, right? And
Mhm.
like you were just saying, I mean, this woman became part of your community to help support
Absolutely.
you in this, evolvement and this working on your health.
Mhm.
What do you think about people that, aren't living either in a foreign country or here that are not, not able to necessarily access somebody to help them like that? Do you have other
Yeah.
strategies?
Well, just do what you can, right?
Mhm.
Because here I don't have that,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
a real luxury of being, overseas often.
Mhm.
And um I try not to beat myself up when not all the things get done,
Mhm.
right? Because taking care of yourself, and like I always say, sleeping comes above all other things.
Yeah. Yep.
Even working out,
Yep.
you
Absolutely.
must sleep
Yep.
for your health.
Yep.
And so I think it's maybe, dividing things up into smaller things. So like
Mhm.
I do laundry on X, Y, and Z days, and I try to clean on these days, so it's not like all piling up or whatever. If you have the opportunity to have someone come in and help you, if you
Mhm.
have access to that, I
Mhm.
definitely,
Mhm.
um, and it can be really hard with family,
Yeah.
and so when you have small kids, that's not, people are being like, what are you talking about, Ashley? I get it. Like
Yeah.
it's very, very hard. But you know, if you have a partner, and just being really open with that
Mhm.
too, I think, so
Mhm.
that people, it's hard when you have an invisible illness for people to understand what you're going through and what
Yeah.
your needs are unless you tell people.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I can imagine too that your book might be really good actually for some spouses or partners of
Yeah.
people with chronic illness to read, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I've heard this story again and again where, you know, more women suffer from chronic illness than
Yeah.
men. And that's for a variety of reasons. We don't need to go into all of those right now, but um it can be hard, I think, if you are in a straight relationship. And I'm just speaking to that right now. It can be true in other relationships too, but for a man to maybe understand that when he's never experienced, his body just doesn't show up in that way. The illness doesn't happen in that same form or fashion. And so having a touchstone for
Yeah.
people to really start to understand, and then it's not just them being hypochondriacs or just them being lazy or whatever else. And
Yeah.
also, and I think this speaks to what you talked about connecting with this woman, this doctor in Seattle, and then eventually the doctor that you work with now, how
Yeah.
important it is to find a good practitioner to be on your team too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that has been huge. My initial Lyme doctor, I mean, I wouldn't be where I was without her likely, but that's also where I met Dr. Fox,
Mhm.
who I now work with, and people will get familiar with him in the book.
Yeah.
But
He intros the book, right? He is
yes,
yeah.
he wrote
Mhm.
the foreword to the book.
Mhm.
And what started as I was actually really nervous to work with him because I already had this relationship.
Mm, mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What?" And then he walked in the door, we started talking, we had some very similar shared experiences,
Mhm.
and really vibed over one of our favorite books, and I thought, "Okay, things are gonna be okay." And, um, he helped me find my healing belief.
Mm.
Really, truly, I think that if you have a practitioner that's there and just listens to you, and he doesn't have the same health issues, it doesn't even
Mhm.
have to be that, right?
Mm, mhm.
But just
Mhm.
having that empathy and that sympathy and that listening ear, and that ability to help you see the gains you are making,
Mm, mhm.
those
Yep.
very small steps, because so often when we're healing, we're taking 2 steps forward and 17 steps backwards,
Yep.
and you can
Yep.
get really in your head about that,
Yep.
and so I think that
Absolutely.
having that cheerleader
Yeah.
um by your side can be very beneficial. And
Yeah.
it was on this trip I took home by myself because I was not doing well. I went back to the Seattle area and I spent a
Mhm.
month there just getting treatments.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
and it was intense and it was hard and it
Yeah.
was, a lot. But that's where it really changed the dynamic I had with my own illness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an important point, and I wanna just say here, I know that both you and I know that not everyone can take a month to get treatments, right? That's not accessible to everyone, so,
No,
first and foremost, just saying that, and I also think that, a lot of women will continue to put their kids, their partner, their work, or whatever ahead of themselves, and that
absolutely.
we each can find pockets of
Hmm.
taking care of ourselves, even if it's not a full month, what have you, but, like,
Yeah.
that in order to heal, you have to do that, right? You
Yeah,
have to start to put yourself first, at least part of the time, right? Because most of the
absolutely.
time, especially with chronic illness, you're not, but I mean, your body may be forcing you to more than, more than you'd like, but in actuality, I think so many women still just push past a lot of stuff in order to keep taking care of others.
Oh yeah. And I am 100,000% that person.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm just going to push through and
yeah.
keep going. And that's something I really have to work on all the time because
Mhm.
it's not in my nature to be asking for help,
Mhm.
or to admit that I need something.
Mhm.
And I remember I really talked about it with my husband Craig. Should I go back, do this? I didn't want to be away.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the opportunity presented itself, and I was lucky enough to be able to do that. And
Where were
again,
you
it's
guys
not.
living at the time?
We're in Nigeria,
In Nigeria, okay.
so I flew to Seattle, and was really gone for that month.
Mhm.
And again, it was something that I'm very aware of was
Mhm.
not available for everybody.
Mhm.
But I that's where Dr. Fox and I really, really started to have that partnership where I knew that he always had my best interest in
Mhm.
mind.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of people don't feel like that with their doctor. Like it's just
Mm.
another person that's cycling through the
Mhm.
office, and as they're seeing, 70 people a day, 40 people a day,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And so, you know, I continued to see him, but I was always sporadic. I never had that opportunity to go back and just reside in the same place that my medical provider lives.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
always haphazard
Yeah.
in like creating something, a protocol, or doing
Yeah.
something. And I think that maybe it took longer to get better because of that.
But that's also
Um,
life.
but that's just life. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it's true for a lot of people, even if it isn't that they're moving to different places overseas, but things come up, right? I mean,
Oh
yeah, I know
yeah.
you see that with your clients all the time. I see it with my clients all the time.
Mm,
Anything from holidays to somebody else in the family getting sick to
right.
work. I mean, there's a million things, right? And so I think absolutely like a remain kind to yourself in the process, right? And
Yeah.
not try for the perfection. And then certainly, having that cheerleader, that practitioner that you really trust and believe in and is there supporting you is
Hmm.
key in that process. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit more about what model that you and Dr. Fox ended up creating?
Sure. So really based on my experience in
Mhm.
getting better from, Lyme, and we've put my Hashimoto's pretty much in remission, is when you're looking at like test numbers and
Mhm.
how I feel overall, right?
Mhm.
And so we created something called the doctor coach model. And we've been growing this for a year and a half, two
Mhm.
years now, I
Mhm.
think. And really refining it. But we find that when people come in and they work with Dr. Fox as the doctor, but then
Mhm.
me as the functional medicine coach and practitioner, that we have much bigger gains with
Mhm.
our patients getting better and staying better.
Mhm.
And that's because they can see him and do the things that I'm not able to do.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't prescribe or anything, like that.
Mhm.
So he can take that part of it, and then I'm there really in that cheerleader
Mhm.
sort of, it's more than that, but really being there side by side with that person as they walk
Yep.
through their own healing
Yep.
journey and getting better. And it really requires a lot of hand holding, and that's something that's hard for people to want to give into,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
and really understand how important that is. So, they'll see him for X amount of visits, and they see me for a certain amount of visits, and he and I talk every day almost about
Mhm.
different patients. And we really work their process together, and finding what is working for them and not, because no two things work for the same people.
Right. We
We may have
wish,
the
but
exact same, you and I could both have Hashimoto's, and how we're getting better from it is different. I mean, the basics for Hashimoto's are the same, but like
right.
there are elements that we each of us carry that are unique,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so we've really seen really good success, working with this model, and people want to feel cared for
Mhm. Mhm.
and like there's a community. So we're already their community, right? They have
Mhm.
these two people who are right there with them. It's a very concierge approach. It's not like
Mhm.
they don't talk to me. I talk to many of our patients multiple times a week.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
When they need something, we're there. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing for people to get because it's something that they don't often get, at
Yeah.
least in the US healthcare system.
Right. And I mean, it's funny because I used to be one of those people that were like, ugh, doctors, they just like push you through. But then you get into this field and you recognize that, I mean, that's the doctors only have so much time and space. So even if
Absolutely.
they're doing functional medicine where they see you for an hour versus, uh, you know, allopathic medicine where they see you for 15 minutes because that's what the insurance allows, they still aren't going to be able to be there outside of that hour, like
Right.
answering emails. Yeah, I mean, to some extent a little bit, but like to really have that supportive place, it's just that there's not necessarily a space for them. And that's really where the coach comes in, right?
Yes,
And the yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And so I think that's why it's such a beautiful thing because we can't expect, just like anything, we can't expect everything from one person. So
Right.
this sets it up to be more of a community kind of
Hmm.
setting rather than just like, oh, why isn't my doctor getting back to me? Or why, this and this and that, which are valid complaints, but the
Absolutely.
doctors can't do it all. They just can't, you
No,
know?
they only have as many hours in the day as you or I
Right.
do,
Right.
right?
And they still have to have a life outside of, their practice too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've found that it really, it's working well, and we're very excited about it and
Mhm.
bringing more people into it. And we see a lot of people with complex chronic illness, and everybody needs a community, but I feel like people who have complex illness really, really need that.
100%. So I have to ask you, what
Yeah.
are some of the biggest lessons that you learned from writing this book? The hard one. Put you in the hot seat.
I should have known. Um, that I still have to work on my own health all the time.
Mm, mhm,
Um, that my natural instinct is to push myself to the edge all the time.
mhm,
And I did this with this book, and it's something that I've really learned. Um, if I write another book, that I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful with my
mm,
health. I
mhm,
knew the things to do
mhm,
to keep it going, but it's not really good to push yourself to that point where you're
mhm,
having to like do those types of things, right? Where
mhm,
you're just really relying on hopefully, your supplement regime,
mhm,
regimen and all of this are working, right?
mhm,
So, um, you know, to be kinder to myself, I think what came out a lot was community. When I wrote
mm,
the book, when I started on it, and you've seen me through this process, and it's something
mhm,
I've talked about a lot, is I don't know where I would be without the people that have surrounded me
mhm,
through the last decade.
mhm,
Whether it's my mom and dad and my brother, my best friend, people that I've met at each post who have been lifelong friends,
mhm,
who have been there for me in moments that I needed them, or just those communities that, like, we had some really scary situations happen in multiple places, and our people rallied around us, and
mm,
it made it much less lonely and
mhm,
scary when you have
mhm.
that. So I think even if you're not moving all the time, having a community is so very important.
It's key to healing. It's key
Mhm.
to, I think evolving and, coming back to yourself again and again too, right? Because you learn so much in the processes of the relationships too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey. I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah. Yep. I
Um,
know.
and just when you write things down on paper, you see things in just a totally different light than you might have
Mm.
in just your memories.
Yeah.
And so it was a really beautiful process and very cathartic for me in many
Mhm.
ways,
Mhm.
and difficult to live um, some of these very hard times that I've
Mm.
either, whether it's sickness or some illness with my daughter that was very scary, or Craig,
Mhm.
situation in Syria. Like there's so much. It was to write those over and over again was hard, but it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And probably another layer of healing too, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And, I think what's really important about this book too is giving hope to those with chronic illness, right? With everything that you went through, in multiple parts of the world, right? And
Yeah,
so, even though there was some pros to that and some bonuses to that, there was also a lot
absolutely.
of cons or hardships in healing because of that too, and the fact that you were able to overcome and get to a place where chronic illness doesn't rule your life. I mean, of course, as you just said, it's like we always have to take care of our bodies. It's not like you get over the chronic illness and you're like, I'm free.
Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
with you for your life, but you have to be aware. But the fact that you came to a place where you are able to feel good and live your life and do momentous things like
Yeah.
writing this book, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it was a testament to healing to be
Yeah.
able to sit down and write this book.
Yes.
And that's what I really hope is to inspire and provide hope to people.
Yep.
That there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm.
And everybody's journey looks different, but there is the light.
There is. Yep, absolutely. So let everyone know how they can get the book.
It is now available on Amazon,
Ah,
so you can buy
yay!
you can buy the paperback. I have a copy here.
There it is.
Woo.
Yes.
And you can get that now on Amazon. You can get the paperback is available. If you want to wait for the Kindle version, that will be released at the end of November, November 29th. In the meantime, if you want to learn more and you're like, I'm not ready to buy the book, but I want to know a little bit about the story, you can go to passportsandparasites.com and download the first chapter.
Oh, that's so cool that you're giving everyone access to the first chapter. And
Yeah.
I recommend buying the paperback personally. I mean, I was telling you this earlier, but for, other people listening, we're on the computer so much, like, and
Hmm.
we're on our devices so much, like, give yourself the joy of having a paperback that you can like read in bed before you go to sleep, or that you can take outside, if it's wintertime, you can just sit in front of the fire and read your book, it's just,
Absolutely.
it's,
Get away from those
it's
screens.
a good reprieve from the screens. Yeah, exactly. Take
Yeah.
care of your health in that way, right? I'm a big
Yes.
fan of reading actual books for your health. So
Me too.
yeah,
And I hope that people will love it.
yeah,
I'm getting great feedback on it, and
yep,
I think it's a big book, but I think it's a fast
yeah.
read for a lot of people. And if you buy the paperback, it has pictures in it,
Which you
so
don't get
when
with
you
any of the other
follow
versions. Yeah,
the other
yeah,
versions,
yeah.
just because the Kindle doesn't really work well with pictures so much.
Right.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
I would love to have come along on my journey with me.
Have you thought about doing an audiobook at some point?
I am doing an audiobook.
Mm,
That is like actually on my list of things to do this week to start getting that set up.
mm-hmm,
So people drive, they're not always
mm-hmm.
necessarily or walking or whatever,
Walking,
right?
hiking, yeah, all this is,
Hiking
yeah.
and you want to listen.
Mm-hmm,
And it's a very fast moving, if you're looking for adventure and
mm-hmm,
healing and community and all of that, I think
mm-hmm.
you'll find that it's a great book for that. So hopefully the audiobook will be out
Soon.
soon.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll definitely have a link in the show notes to the Amazon, the place on Amazon that you can order it. And
Yep.
then I would just say to everybody, after you read it, leave a nice review.
Yes, please.
Reviews are very, very helpful. And you can
Yep.
also leave a review for this podcast while you're at it. It's super helpful for all of us.
Yes, for all of us.
Exactly. So, well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing this amazing story and book with us today.
Thanks for having me, Christine. It's such
Yeah.
a joy to be here with you.
Yeah. And I'm super excited for everybody to be able to access this book and
Yeah.
learn so much from it and enjoy it at the same time, too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
my hope.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, you guys. I will see you next time.